Welcome once again to the Alpha Male 2.0 podcast. Sorry I have been away for about 2 weeks. I have been busy moving my wife to our new home in Dubai. If you've been paying attention to my YouTube channel, I've given you the details on that. But I'm back. Sorry about that. Very unusual. I'm one of these guys that's pretty consistent. I have been consistently creating content, blog posts or articles and or videos, podcasts, what have you, since 2009 without taking a break. And so I'm pretty sure I'm accurate in stating this, that the last 2 weeks is the longest break I have ever taken in my entire life. Since 2009, 13 years of creating content. So there you go. It could not be helped. Just one of those things. And thankfully it will not happen again because now everyone has moved and we are not quite settled yet, but we are in Dubai and the international move portion is over. So in this podcast, I'm going to address something that I get a lot of questions on, and that is the concept of persistence. When do you keep going? When do you stop and reevaluate? When does it make sense to stop? Because I get a lot of questions about this, particularly when it comes to building your Alpha 2.0 business. Guys will say, well, how long does it take until I get to the point when I should probably realize that this business is working, I should do something else? And I will answer that in this podcast. I am Caleb Jones. If you didn't know, this is Alpha Male 2.0. I make a high location independent income, international income, while dating multiple attractive women, and I teach men like you how to do the same thing. First thing I would direct you to is a really good book called The Dip by Seth Godin. Seth Godin, I think, is a genius. I've read many of Seth Godin's books, not all of them, but a few of them. And he's very smart. And I'm not going to go through that entire book or even summarize it for you. I would just point you in that direction. It is a very short book. And he talks about how your goal, if you are running into resistance, maybe you should quit. However, the assumption is that you are trying to be the best in the world in your space. So in other words, if you are a cookie stand in Dubuque, Iowa, then you should be the best cookie stand in Dubuque, Iowa in the world. And as long as that's your objective, it is okay to quit. It's a little more complicated than that, but that's the gist of that book. I highly recommend you read that book. It's a very good book. I don't agree with all of it, but I agree with most of it, and I agree with his level of thinking. One thing that he does talk about in that book is something that I've referred to in my own stuff called the happiness change curve. And if you've read my book, The Unchained Man, I talk about the happiness change curve, and if you're listening to the audio of this, it's kind of hard to demonstrate to you, so I'll try to explain this to you verbally as best I can. If you watch the video, I'll move with my finger. So let's say you have a condition in your life that on a scale of 1 to 10, in terms of happiness, that makes you, right now you're at a 3 in happiness. So you're not satisfied with this area. So you want to do better. You want to raise this to an 8 or a 9 in your life, maybe even a 10. So you start to make changes in your life when you're at that 3. You start to make changes. When you make changes, what happens to your happiness, generally speaking? Does it go up, down, or stay the same when you first start making changes? The answer is, in most cases, it goes down. So what'll happen is, you were at a 3, it's going to drop to a 2 or even a 1. So let's say you're a big fat motherfucker and you want to lose weight. And so you're like, that's it, I'm going to lose weight. I'm 400 pounds or whatever you are, and I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to start running every morning. So you get your big fat ass into your fat running shorts, and you get out there at 6 o'clock in the morning, it's freezing cold, and you run down the street, and you're panting and sweating, and you feel like you're going to die. And you got to do that every morning, even if you don't want to. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you? You're at a 1. So you made a change to improve your condition, but your happiness actually dropped. Now, the way life works is that you don't stay at 1 forever. Eventually, that 1 becomes less troublesome. You become more used to it. So that 1 becomes a 2. And then that 2 becomes a 3. And then that 3, if you stick with it, that 3 becomes a 4. So you start at 3, now you're at 4. And then it becomes a 5, 6, 7, 8. And then wherever you are, maybe you hit a 7, 8, or 9. And then, bam, you nail that there forever. And now for the rest of your life, you're at a 7, 8, or 9 when you were at a 3. But you had to proceed through what Seth Godin calls the dip. And I've talked about this too. You have to proceed through the new level of unhappiness. You got to persevere through that. And what most human beings do, well, most human beings don't even make a change to make themselves more happy. Most human beings, if they're at a 5 or a 6 or a 4, a certain area of their life, they just stay that way forever. That's the standard beta male approach to life. You just stay there forever, put up with it, and just suck it up, which is a terrible way to live because I teach long-term masculine happiness. So that's, most people didn't make a change. Most people, when they make a change, they encounter the dip, they go, oh, I don't like this, and they go right back to being a dork, right back to being a loser. Or right back to, I shouldn't say loser, I should be that harsh. Right back to being unhappy or moderately unhappy. That's what most human beings do, men and women both. Successful people, i.e. in my world, happy people, because that's what success means to me, is that you're happy most of the time. I'm happy most of the time, so I consider myself very successful. Those are the people who have learned to suck it up and become a man, grit your teeth, pound through that dip, and get to the other side as fast as you can. One of my mentors, a man named Robert Ringer, talks about how if you want something in life that is something you currently don't have, you have to pay the price to get that, which is the dip. So what you should do, the rational approach is, you do whatever you can to pay that price as fast as you can, to get over the pain as fast as you can. Instead of dragging out for years, pay it in 6 months or a month or 2 days or whatever it is, whatever is feasible. So Seth Godin talks about when you encounter the dip, is the dip a good time to quit? One of the factors he uses is how many people are you influencing, one or many? So if you try to convince one person of something and they said, fuck you, it's probably not time to quit, right? If you're trying to convince thousands of people, thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and you bust your ass, you're not getting anywhere, then maybe you could consider quitting. Although, stick with me on this, there's a catch to this that I'm going to cover in a little bit. It's not quite that simple, but that's one aspect that he talks about in the book. Something else that Seth Godin talks about in that book is setting up a stop loss, very similar to investing in stocks, or when I used to heavily play blackjack, I had this. Define exactly when you'll quit. I will quit when I've done this, and this within this time frame. And if I'm still not making money, or I'm still not successful with women, or I'm still not doing this, then I will quit, meaning I will change my approach and do something else. You don't actually quit and just go back and watch TV. You change your approach and do something else. And my favorite example of this are these day game guys. I've encountered these guys throughout the years, several of them, where they will spend like the entire summer, 3 months, and they'll make something like 6,000 approaches. They will be approach machines. They'll approach all these chicks and they won't get laid. And the reason they don't get laid is they don't change their approach. They keep on doing what doesn't work 6,000 times over, which is fucking stupid. The opposite was Thomas Edison. And if you know the famous quote, there's a famous story now in success circles. A reporter was asking Thomas Edison, I heard you've had 10,000 failures creating the light bulb. And Thomas Edison said, yes, I've had 10,000 failures. He's like, well, don't you feel like an idiot? Don't you feel terrible? And Thomas Edison said, no, that's very valuable information. I now know 10,000 things that I know for a fact don't work. That's why I'm going to try new things constantly. That's the opposite of the day game guy that approaches women 6,000 times the same way and blows his brains out for months on end and then throws his arms in the air and says day game doesn't work. No, I'm not a day game guy, but you get my point. Matter of fact, Seth Godin talks about in the dip, setting up a quitting contract, a contract for yourself of when you'll quote unquote quit. Only if X and Y and Z occur, then I will quit. If they don't occur, I will not quit and I will keep at it. That's pretty smart. The issue is what is X, Y, and Z? Which is what I'll cover in a second, because a lot of you guys are deluding yourselves in terms of your level of activity of what is sufficient enough to gather enough information to know whether or not what you're doing is not working. But his point is you have a contract that specifically states when you'll quit instead of I'm going to quit when my leg hurts. Make sense? Now, I'm going to switch to someone else. Someone a lot of you know is David Goggins. If you've read David Goggins' book, he has an interesting concept called the 40% rule. And what he talks about is, and I'm not sure if I agree with this 100%, but I'm certainly in the zone. Maybe I don't agree with his exact number, but I do agree with the gist of what he is saying. And the 40% rule, this is his rule, states that when you are exerting yourself physically, like you're lifting weights, you're doing an endurance thing, you're running a marathon, and you're ready to die, you're ready to stop, you're too tired, you can't lift another weight, you can't run another mile, you can't even run 10 more feet. What he's saying is that you're only at 40% when that occurs. So when your body is telling you, oh my God, I can't do that anymore, you're only at 40%. You could do another 60% past that. It's going to hurt, you're not going to like it, but you can do it. So you have that aspect too, is that most people set their sights too low. Most people are lazy, particularly men today. Unquestionably men today. Men today are the laziest they have ever been in all of Western civilization. And that is a fact. That is not my opinion. So And unfortunately, a lot of you are in that category. You're a lot lazier than people in my generation, back in my day, back in Generation X, back in the 80s, which wasn't that long ago. And certainly before that, the World War II generation. These were manly, badass, high testosterone badasses, these prior generations. And they weren't lazy. They got to work. So just be aware, you may be underestimating your own abilities. Matter of fact, a lot of people do. Matter of fact, most people do. Grant Cardone talks about, how much money are you making based on your potential? Not based on how much you want, not based on how much you are right now, based on your potential. I have been in some scenarios lately where I've had to ask myself that question. Very lately, in the last few months, I've had several scenarios where I had to sit down with myself, look at myself in the mirror and say, Caleb, how much money are you making based on your potential? Because what is your potential? Your potential is insane. If you really sit and think about it, be objective. Your potential is ridiculous. My potential to earn income is insane compared to what I make now. And I think what I make now is pretty goddamn good. Matter of fact, it is goddamn good. Objectively speaking, it's goddamn good. But my potential, it's nowhere even close to what I could be doing. So you have to factor that as well in terms of how far are you? What are your results? What have you already done? How much action have you already put in? Now, let me get to the primary point of this, at least in terms of questions that I've seen guys on my audience ask me. Caleb, when you start your Alpha 2.0 business, how long do you wait before you say to yourself, this isn't working, I better pick another niche, or I better pick a different business, or I better pick a different blank? Now, I'll give you my standard answer, but here's the problem. There's a deeper problem. My standard answer is 18 months. 18 months of real effort before you decide it's not working. That's just kind of I have no mathematics behind that answer, and I have no deep analysis past that answer. That's just an answer that feels right to me. But here's the issue with this. There are several of them. Number one, top of the list, as I applied earlier, guys will say, I've been working on this business for 6 months. Caleb, I've been working on this business for 8 months. Caleb, I've been busting my ass, in quotes, on this business for 2.5 months, and I haven't made any money. And I will look at them and I will say, how much marketing have you actually done? You say you're busting your ass. You say you've worked on this business. What exactly is your work? And if you ask them a few questions, 100% of the time, these guys are going to give you a bunch of SW work, a bunch of bullshit work. Well, I've thought about it. Well, I've written a book. Well, I've written some articles. Well, I've set up a website. Well, I've blobbity bullshit. No marketing. How much of all these hours that you've spent last 3, 4, 5 months have been on the phone contacting new people to buy your thing? Or on LinkedIn, DMing people, DMing cold contacts for them to buy your thing? Or spending money on real advertising where you're doing A/B split testing on Facebook, YouTube, Google, Instagram. You're actually selling your thing. How much of this time that you've spent, quote, busting your ass, unquote, over the past 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, have you actually spent in terms of marketing? Not anything else, motherfucker. Marketing. And 100% of the time, the guy asked me that question, I go, well, not really. Right. So guess what? That 18-month period doesn't even fucking apply to you because you haven't even started your business. You haven't even started your business if you're not marketing that goddamn thing. That's where the rubber meets the road. I don't care how hard you're working. The world is full of men who work hard who will never make more than $40,000 a year. That's literal. The world is full of men who work longer hours than me, men and women who work longer and harder hours than I do, who will never make more than $40,000 a year. I've seen a lot of Mexican maids in the United States work very long hours and blow their brains out for very little money. Hard work alone is not the fucking answer. The answer is hard work plus working on what matters, working on what strategically is most likely to accomplish a result, and that is marketing. And as always, that is the one thing that guys don't want to do, marketing and sales. That's the one thing guys don't like to do. So if you are ever tempted to ask, well, how long I've spent X amount of time. Now, by the way, I'm going to use a woman example. This is Alpha Male 2.0. It's just not just about business, it's about women too. Well, Caleb, I've been doing online dating for 6 months and I've only had 2 dates. I've heard guys say this. When I sit down and say, how many swipes are you actually making? How many DMs are you actually spending? How many hours per week are you actually on the apps? How many apps are you actually on? I get these really weak pussy answers. oh, I don't know, an hour or two a week. Oh, like 2 days a week. And when I was hardcore Black Dragon, getting really good at online dating, I was hitting that shit every day. I was spending 15 to 25 hours a week on the dating sites, on the DMs, on the phone, on text, on first and second dates, busting my ass for real, getting laid. At least eventually getting laid. Initially, I didn't get laid at all, but eventually I did because I put in the correct action. So this isn't just about business. This is about women. This could be anything. Fitness. There could be anything you can think of. What exactly are you doing? Not how many hours are you, quote, working on it, or how many hours you've been thinking about it or stressing about it. That doesn't care. By the way, guys do that too. They'll say, I've been working on this for blank. And when you really drill down and ask them the questions, what they're saying is they've been working on it a little bit. They've really just been thinking about it a lot. I'm sorry, dumb fuck. Thinking about it doesn't actually produce results. Okay, I'm sorry. And unfortunately, I have an audience that tends to overthink things and not take action. Stop thinking and start taking action. So do you understand that the question that you're asking, well, how long should I wait before I decide, isn't even a valid question the vast majority of the time? You're not putting in the correct type of effort and or the correct amount of effort. Matter of fact, for you guys who want to be big achievers, I suggest you read Grant Cardone's book, which is the 10X Rule. And he talks there about blowing your brains out and working really hard. Now, you don't have to be Grant Cardone. I'm not Grant Cardone. You don't have to be that guy. It's fine. I understand that. Okay. But you get my point. Too many guys who said they've tried for months haven't done the marketing or the outreach or the dating stuff or the actual, rubber meets road dating stuff. They just haven't. It's just my experience. And I'm talking in terms of the business question. I mean, it's 100%. I have never had a guy come to me and say, oh yeah, I've been busting my ass for 6 months. I haven't made any money. And I say, how much marketing have you done? And he's like, oh man, I've been blowing my brains out with marketing. 10, 15 hours a week, marketing and sales, on the phone, ads, you name it, man. I've never seen that happen. Never had it happen. It's always other shit. Fucking with your website, posting on forums. No, sorry. Now, let me pivot a little bit and talk about when people make mistakes, because I've gotten questions about this. Well, Caleb, when you make mistakes, how do you handle it? When you make mistakes in your woman life, how do you handle it? When you're building your business, how do you handle it? When you make mistakes, your 5 flag stuff. When you make mistakes, how do you handle that stuff? Failure is a requirement of success. You cannot look at mistakes as bad things. And I have talked about, if you've read the Black Dragon blog in the old days, that's still all there. All my articles are still there from way back when. I made numerous mistakes, embarrassing, stupid mistakes with women for approximately 2 years straight. I've said this before, I have done everything wrong in terms of dating women or having relationships with women that you can possibly do. With the one exception of getting women pregnant by accident, I'm not quite that stupid. But with that one exception, I have done, if you come up with the scenario or the stupid thing you could do on a first date, second date, having sex, trying to get laid with somebody, in a relationship, with a girlfriend, FB, NLTR, you name the stupid, hey, Caleb, you ever done that? Yes. Hey, Caleb, you ever fucked up? Yes, I have. I have made numerous mistakes. And that is why I went from divorced, stupid beta male dad to guru level dating guy, getting laid whenever I want, including with 18-year-olds without having to pay them, in my late 30s in 2 years, a 2-year process. That's why I made that jump so quickly, because I wasn't afraid to make mistakes. When I started my first business in my early or mid 20s, I should say, when I went full time anyway, my business, I went from 0 to a 6-figure income in 3.5 years once I quit my job. And during that 3.5-year period, I made mistake after mistake after mistake. I lost money. I wasted time. I spent time on stupid projects that didn't work. I blew thousands of dollars on stupid marketing techniques that didn't work. I made all kinds of stupid mistakes, and yet I ended up making $100,000 a year at age 27 in 1990s dollars. It worked. Mistakes are part of success. The more mistakes you make, the faster you'll get to the success. So whenever you make a mistake, beating yourself up is the dumbest thing on earth. You say, good, I made a mistake. I'm closer to a win. Good. This is sales training. When they teach sales guys this, they say, every no is good because that means you're that much closer to a yes. So when you get a no, you're like, good, I got a no. I'm that much closer to a yes now. That's how I view failure and mistakes. Good, I fucked up. I'm closer to the big money now. Good, I fucked up. I'm closer to my woman goals now. That's how you have to view this. You can't fear mistakes. You can't beat yourself up about mistakes. Now, the one exception to that is if you keep making the same goddamn mistake over and over again. And this is what I've talked about men who get into a traditional monogamous marriage and then they get divorce rate, that goes this horrible divorce, and then they turn right around and get another traditional monogamous marriage again, Scott Adams. Those guys who just make the same mistake over and they get divorced again and then they get married again, then divorced again. They make the same fucking mistake over and over again because they're mentally deficient in that part of their brain, even if they may have a high IQ. So that is bullshit and unacceptable. If I am good at anything, I am really good. I am a genius at not making the same mistake twice. When I make a mistake, I log it in my brain. Sometimes I even write it down. I say, okay, I am never doing that shit again because I am really good at not making the same mistake twice. I make mistakes all the time, but I'm really good at not making at least big mistakes over and over and over again. I might make little tiny mistakes over and over again. That's okay. But I'm talking about the big ones, okay? So that's the one exception. Other than that, never beat yourself up about making a mistake. Keep going. Keep persisting. The results are coming as long as you're taking right action. You're actually out in the dating market approaching women. You're actually doing marketing and sales in your business and so on. Now, that often leads to the second question. The second question is, well, what happens, Caleb? How do you handle your motivation if you keep trying and trying and trying and trying and trying? You're not getting anywhere. You know what that means? You're doing the wrong thing. You are that day game guy who's making thousands of approaches the exact same way. Most likely, you are not changing your approach. And the example Tony Robbins gives, I'm name dropping a lot of success gurus in this podcast, aren't I? The example that Tony Robbins gave 30 years ago was when you take a flight from Los Angeles to Hawaii and you're on that plane is off course 98% of the flight. It's off course 98% of the flight. Why? Because it's constantly making course corrections, and that's how it gets to Hawaii. Life works the same way. So if you're not getting the results, change what you're doing. There's a part in my book, The Unchained Man, alphamale.book.com, where I talk about when I was in full contact karate when I was a kid. I was a teenager. And I was doing a belt test. It was a full contact. We didn't have MMA back then. This is back in the 80s. We didn't call it MMA. We didn't have UFC. We just called it full contact. And it actually was a lot bloodier back then because there were less rules. But anyway, I was doing a belt test where a much bigger guy than me was beating the shit out of me. And he had me wrapped around. He was behind me. And he wrapped around his arms around me and I couldn't get out. And I tried to use the techniques that I was taught to you stick your butt over the left and then you kind of pull your arms up and it breaks out. And it wasn't working because he was bigger and stronger. And I kept doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it. And finally, my karate teacher said, stop. And I talk about this in the book. He says, Caleb, stop. And he starts laughing. I was very embarrassed. He's like, Caleb, if what you're doing isn't working, do something else. For fuck's sake. He didn't say for fuck's sake. A little more polite than that. But that was his tone. He was a little pissed off. And so I did. I stamped on the guy's foot, made his foot bleed. I was already bleeding by then. And I got out of his little hold. So there you go. So if you are constantly just batting your head against the wall over and over, I'm not getting any results, Caleb, but I really am putting in the effort and nothing is working. It's been weeks and weeks and weeks. I really am putting in the effort. I'm not bullshitting about not doing any marketing or what have you. Really am doing it, not getting anywhere. Change what you're doing. If you know my story, I kept detailed spreadsheets and files on all the techniques I was using for my online dating, my first dates and my second dates, and in some cases my third dates. And I would track everything. And when I found something that worked, I would keep doing it. When I tested something new, I tried on 4 or 5 different women. If it didn't work on any of them, then I said, okay, that doesn't work. Notice I didn't try it on one, I tried on 4 or 5. That was my rule, 4 or 5 women. Once it didn't work 4 or 5 times in a row, then I say, okay, that's not working. And I keep trying new things. And eventually I got a system down. It's in all my books. You can go to calebjones.com or alphamale20.com, look at my store. But anyway, I got to a system that worked because I wasn't afraid to fail and I changed my results. Cool? Cool. If you want me to go into a deeper dive on this persistent stuff in a future podcast, let me know. I would certainly be happy to do that. In the meantime, have fun. I will see you next week. Bye.